The wind off the Frostfangs sighed through the blackened pines like a restless choir, an endless murmur that had haunted Jon Snow since leaving the wall. Ghost padded a dozen paces ahead, fur as pale as driven snow under the weak spring moon, crimson eyes catching every flicker of motion among the drooping branches. Somewhere in the dark the others trudged, Samwell's uneven breath, Gren's muttered curses, Dolorous Ed's dry laments. But even their combined presence could not banish the feeling that the forest itself watched and waited. Jon tightened his cloak, fingers stiff from cold, and lifted his gaze. Far across the clearing loomed the low, misshapen palisade Craster called a keep. Peeled logs shoved crookedly into frozen earth, sharpened tips leaning at drunken angles, a crude gate lashed with leather thongs and barred by a fallen pine trunk. Beyond, a single fire burned within a sag-backed hall, its dull glow a smear of ochre against black sky. Smoke drifted from a hole in the thatch, carrying the stench of wet wood and burnt hair. Craster's daughters, his wives, moved in silhouette, mere shadows tending pigs or dragging buckets from the well. Every time Jon returned to this place, he felt the same knot twist inside him. Revulsion, pity, a smoldering fury that the vows of the Night's Watch could force them to break bread with a monster. He tasted iron on his tongue as he remembered the last visit. Gilly with her swollen belly, pale and trembling while Craster puffed ale-sour breath over her and bragged about the strength of the sun growing inside. Even now the picture sharpened without bidding. The bastard girl's wide eyes when she begged Jon to take her south. Just one word, please, on cracked lips. And Jon, bound by orders and honor, had done nothing. A branch snapped behind him. Bloody gods, Gren muttered, emerging from the gloom with frost in his beard. I'd sooner face a white than that old goat. Dolorous Ed trailed after, shoulders hunched. At least the whites don't drink your ale, kick your dog, and tell you the wall's full of fools while doing it. They just try to tear your face off. Honest work. Sam came last, wheezing as he shuffled through the crusted snow. He clutched a bundle of kindling to his chest. And maybe Craster will be in better spirits tonight. It's warmer. He won't need as much firewood. Jon snorted. Craster's spirits depend on only one thing: how much he's had to drink, and who he's decided to blame for his misfortunes. Ed finished. Which is to say, all of us. They fell silent as Ghost halted before the gate. The direwolf's lips peeled back, low rumble vibrating in his throat. Inside the hall, a rough male voice was rising, thick with drink. Jon recognized the cadence. Craster berating one of the girls for some imagined slight. A slap, a muffled cry, then another sharper. Sam flinched at each blow. Gren shifted his weight, eyes clouding with anger. Jon felt his own fists clench, gloved knuckles creaking. Stay here, he said. No one argued. With a nod to Ghost, stay close, Jon approached the gate. He ducked under the sagging lintel, pushed past the pine trunk bar, and slid into the reek of pig shit and stale ale. The hall's rafters sagged beneath ice and rot, and the fire pit at center coughed more smoke than flame. Craster sat on a three-legged stool, belly spilling over his stained breeches, one hand gripping a clay cup, the other fisting the hair of a girl whose face was already purpling. Gilly knelt nearby, arms around a toddling child, her eyes wide with silent plea. Craster's pig-small eyes flicked to Jon, and he bared a yellow grin. Look what the cold winds blew back. Bastard of Winterfell, come to lick my scraps again. He pushed the girl away so roughly she fell against the fire pit stones. No, don't get up, girl. Crawl, that's what you're good for. Jon ignored him and helped the girl to her feet. She was no more than 14. Her lip bled freely. He steadied her, then turned a cold gaze on Craster. We need shelter, food. Our men are hungry. Your men. Craster spat into the flame. It hissed. Watchmen, beggars, crows, all the same. You shit in my yard and call it a favor. He swigged ale, wiped his mouth with the back of a grimy hand. I'll give you what I always give. Take it or get back to your bloody wall. Jon kept his voice level. And what of her? He nodded toward Gilly. She's full with child again. Craster's grin split wider. A strong sun this time. The gods have promised. John felt heat rise behind his eyes. He had seen the promise. The perfect silence of the forest broken only by a single cry, the white shapes gliding between the trees to claim their tribute. He had stood powerless while Craster offered his own blood to the darkness beyond the wall. "What gods do you serve?" he asked softly. "The real ones." Craster slammed his cup on a nearby table, splashing ale. "Not that soft Southron 7. Mine answer." Ghost edged closer, hackles standing. Craster sneered at him. "Call off your mutt." John stared at the old man, saw the slack mouth, the broken veins on nose and cheeks, the eyes that held no remorse. He heard again the infant's cry in the night. He felt Gilly's hand trembling around his wrist. "No," John said. Craster blinked. "What?" "I said no." John's voice was quiet, but the hall seemed to hold its breath. No more sacrifices. No more children left to die. Craster lurched to his feet. "You overstep, Crow." He reached for the hatchet tucked in his belt loop. "This is my hall, my wives, my seed. I do as I please." Ghost growled. Lips peeled back, the sound low and murderous. John drew Longclaw. The Valyrian steel whispered, picking up every twist of firelight in ripples of dark water. He placed the point low between them. "Not tonight." Craster sneered, foul breath carrying on a caramel of rot and sour beer. "You think a pretty sword makes you king here?" The hatchet flashed. Steel rang on iron. Sparks leaped. Craster staggered under the force of the parry, but he was strong for an old man, shoulders knotted from a lifetime of swinging axes. He lunged again, aiming for John's thigh. John pivoted, let the blow glance off his boot heel, and brought Longclaw around in a flat arc that carved through Craster's crude wooden stool, splitting it in two. The old man roared, spit flying, and charged. John took 3 steps back, felt the packed earth floor crunch beneath his boots, and waited for the opening. The hatchet rose, gleaming. John slipped aside, slashing under Craster's arm. Valyrian steel sliced flesh as if through parchment. Blood splattered the hearthstones, black in the firelight. Craster bellowed in pain and rage. He swung wildly. John ducked, drove a hard elbow into the old man's gut, then seized the dangling beard and yanked. Craster stumbled. John's knee met his jaw with wet crack. The hatchet fell. There was a heartbeat, a brittle, fragile moment where the hall seemed frozen. John heard nothing but the rush of his own blood. Craster stared up at him, eyes wide, beard matted crimson. His lips moved soundlessly. John raised Longclaw. The sword seemed to weigh nothing. He brought it down, swift and sure, severing spine at the base of the neck. Craster collapsed like a butchered boar. The scream that followed came not from his throat, but from one of the women. Perhaps Gilly, perhaps another. Then they all cried at once, a chorus of release and terror. John stood over the corpse, chest heaving, smelling smoke and fresh blood. Ghost nudged his hand. The direwolf's muzzle was red where droplets had speckled his snout, but his eyes were calm, as if to say, "It is done." John turned. The daughters had gathered against the far wall, skirts bunched, faces streaked with tears and soot. Gilly moved forward first, steps hesitant. She looked at the body, then at John. "He would have killed us all someday," she whispered. John wiped Longclaw on Craster's fur cloak and sheathed it. "No one dies tonight." He raised his voice so all could hear. "This keep is no longer Craster's. It belongs to the Night's Watch, and to any woman here who wishes its protection." Behind him, Gren and Ed appeared at the doorway, drawn by the noise, their swords half out of scabbards. They stared at the bloodied floor, the corpse, then at John's steady gaze. Sam peeked from behind, pale as milk. "What have you done?" Sam breathed. "What had to be done?" John said. "Fetch the others. We'll bury him outside the gate. See to the women first." Gren rubbed his jaw. "Lord Commander won't like this." "I'm not sure I like it," Ed said. "But the alternative was worse. I'd rather be hanged for killing a monster than thanked for feeding children to snow demons." John looked around the hall. How small it seemed now with Craster gone. Still foul, still cruel in memory, yet strangely hollow, as if some oppressive weight had lifted. The fire crackled, sparks whirling up into the smoke-dark rafters. He felt the eyes of the women on him, not fearful now, but watchful, weighing his worth. He swallowed. We will need to fortify the palisade. Move the fire pit, patch the roof. Craster's larder has salt pork and oats enough for a fortnight. We'll make this place ours, safe. A murmur spread through the daughters. One by one they straightened, shoulders squaring, as if a rope binding them had snapped. John knelt beside Craster's body. The old man's features sagged in death, jaw slack, gray tongue protruding between broken teeth. John reached down and closed the heavy lids, though part of him wanted to leave them staring sightless at the rafters. Even monsters had eyes once, before the world corroded them. Outside, the forest wind shifted, carrying a chill that slipped under the hall walls. Ghost raised his head, nostrils flaring. John felt it too, the sense of something vast moving in the dark, like icebergs crunching beneath a frozen sea. The others would come for their due. Tonight they would find their pact broken and a dead offering denied. He stood. Double the watch. Keep torches burning all night. No fires go dark till dawn. If you see pale eyes in the trees, blow the horn twice. Ed whistled softly. That'll keep us busy. Gren grimaced. If the whites come, we don't have near enough men. No, John said, but we have stones, fire, and walls, and we have each other. He felt the weight of every face upon him, the black brothers, the freed women, the child in Gilly's arms, each one a burden and a purpose both. Craster's keep is ours now. We will hold until Mormont returns, or until the wall marches north to find us. Sam stepped closer, voice trembling not from cold alone. And when the Lord Commander learns you killed a man under guest rights? John thought of Mormont's lined face, the crow's wing brows drawn in stern judgment. He'll call it murder. It was just, Gren said firmly. Just doesn't always matter, Ed muttered. But maybe this once it will.
Jon met Sam's anxious gaze.
When the truth comes, I'll answer for it. Until then, we survive. He turned to the room at large. Gather what you can. Burn what's fouled. Tonight we begin again. The brothers moved, uncertain but obedient. One fetched water to scrub the blood-soaked floor. Another stacked broken stools for kindling. A leathery-cheeked woman, Craster's fifth wife, John thought, pulled a cracked kettle from the shelf and began to shape dough for flatbread. There was a tentative energy in the hall now, fragile yet growing, like the first green shoot pushing through frost. Ghost trotted to the doorway, standing sentinel. Snowflakes drifted on the wind outside, each twisting spark of white a silent witness to the change wrought in blood and steel. John stepped beyond the threshold. He breathed the forest's cold breath, the pine tar, the distant tang of ice. Somewhere beyond the treeline, the heart home of the others watched with frosted malice. But here, inside this rough circle of fire and faith, he had drawn a line. He felt the echo of old words, spoken on windswept battlements. Night gathers, and now my watch begins. Tonight the watch began anew, but it was no longer a watch of mere endurance. It was a claiming, promise. He looked up, past the palisade tips, to the dull shimmer of the aurora rippling across the sky. Green and purple folds danced, veils of cold fire. For an instant he could almost believe the old gods were watching, lanterns held aloft to light the path he had chosen. 5 hours, he whispered to the night, thinking of the span the tale must fill, of the miles yet to walk in story. We'll give them a dawn worth waiting for. The wind answered with a hush, carrying the faintest note of approval or warning. John could not tell which. He gripped Longclaw's hilt and listened. The night beyond Craster's keep stirred, restless and cold. But within these ragged walls a new flame had kindled, fragile, yes, yet stubborn as the man who bore it. And so the first hour passed. In blood, in fire, in the trembling hope of women who had never known choice until the instant an oath-bound bastard raised his sword and shattered chains invisibly forged. The story was only beginning, and dawn lay far ahead. But somewhere in the distant dark the ice cracked, subtle and sure, under the weight of a single act of defiance. The grave was barely 3 feet deep when the spade struck frozen shale, jarring John's wrists through the rough pine haft. His breath plumed silver in the half-light before dawn, mingling with the shudders of the others laboring beside him. They had worked through the night, first emptying Craster's larder to feed 24 women and twice that number of brothers, then felling jack pines to mend gaps in the palisade. Only when the watch was set and the hall swept clean of blood did John order the burial. It felt necessary, simple as drawing breath. The corpse could not remain within walls meant now for the living. Gren and Ed hauled the shapeless bundle to the pit, the old man's limbs stiff under the patched cloak they'd tied with hemp rope. Sam offered a short prayer to the 7, though his voice cracked on the father's name, and dolorous Ed muttered his own darker blessing to whatever gods bother listening this far north. Ghost paced the rim, red eyes following every motion, hackles flat now that death smelled faint. The daughters, wrapped in threadbare shawls, lingered at the edge of the clearing. Snow drifted about their bare feet, yet none complained. They stared at the shape on the sleigh with blank, exhausted faces, as though waiting for some final cruelty even death might grant. John climbed out of the pit. His palms bled where the haft had rubbed raw, and the sweat beneath his furs iced the hair at his temples. He glanced toward the tree line instinctively. In the weak gray glow, all trunks looked like tall, pale men. Resolute, he picked up Craster's hatchet, still sticky despite a rinsing in icy water, and set it on the corpse's chest. "Let the forest take back what it fed these many years," he said.
No horn sounded.
No ghostly shapes flickered between the pines. Only wind answered, rattling the palisade tips. They lowered Craster into the earth, shoveled snow-packed dirt atop him, and tamped it flat with the spade, but until the mound rose low and hard as a cairn. Sam placed a shard of charred oak at its head, carving a simple mark, a single eye gouged deep. John wondered if that eye looked northward or inward. He added nothing. When they returned inside, the hall felt warmer, though the fire burned no brighter. The women moved with a new purpose, mending torn cloaks, sharpening knives on slate, whispering among themselves without flinching at each male voice. Gilly drifted near John while he stripped off sodden gloves. "He kept a ledger," she said, almost shy. "Scratches on the wall behind his cot. Which daughter bore which child? Which ones he gave away." John swallowed. "Show me." She led him to the cramped sleeping alcove, where stale rushes hid a stink of ale and urine. Craster had gouged tallies in rows, each line ending in a small symbol, a crooked crown for daughters, an ugly rune for sons. The scarred would crawled with them, as though someone had tried to teach worms to write. John ran a thumb across the grooves. Some were darkened with pitch, fresh ones scored bright. "We will erase them," he said. "They belong to no one's story now." Gilly nodded, but her gaze lingered on a cluster of newer marks, and John knew she saw the sun still quickening beneath her ribs. He reached to lay a hand atop hers. She flinched first, then let him guide her fingers away from the wall. "Your child will not be a debt," he promised. "Not here." Later, when frosted light finally seeped across the sky, John climbed the gate ladder and surveyed their claimed realm. 8 watch brothers notched arrow slits between logs, half frozen but alert. Beyond, the forest lay as it ever had, silent, secret, hostile. Yet night had passed without wights or others. Perhaps the gods, real or nameless, weighed Craster's evil enough that they granted respite. He descended to the yard where Ed organized a ragged unit of women learning to string bows. Many had never held a weapon save kitchen knives, but their faces hardened with each successful draw. One, tall and dark-haired, loosed an arrow that thudded into a bundled straw target. She offered a savage grin. John returned it with approval. Every arrow loosed by those hands might spare a black brother. Every small freedom forged fresh armor. At midday they butchered a sow gone old and stringy. Stew bubbled in an iron cauldron scented with wild onion and garlic. Gren had dug from beneath thawing soil near the waste trench. The air tickled like a feast. Sam still prodded John about ravens. How would they inform Lord Commander Mormont? John kept delay as answer. There were no spare birds left. Craster choked the last 3 for a stew months ago, the women said. They would need to make choices later. The first real test came with dusk. Pale hues bled scarlet behind black spruce and distant peaks. Ghost bristled, turning his muzzle north-northeast. John felt the hairs on his own arms prickle under wool. He ordered torches lit atop every watchpoint. Their flames snapped spitefully at the wind. An hour later the horn sounded twice, thin, desperate. John sprinted, Longclaw already free. At the eastern flank, 3 brothers crouched behind the newly spiked parapet, bows raised toward the darkness. Something moved between the trees, hunched, swaying shapes that glimmered bone-white beneath rising moonbrine. John counted 5, maybe 6. Whites, aroused by murder scent. He pulled Gren close, arrowheads lit with pitch, heads or chest. If they reached the gate, Malson's men cut them down, torches ready. No panic. A second volley of pine pitch arrows arced and fell. One corpse jerked, flame blossoming along rotted hide. Another staggered yet kept forward, ribs black with sap that would not burn. John vaulted the parapet stairs until he stood on frozen ground beyond the gate. Ghost raced ahead, silent as snowfall. The dire wolf leapt, knocking a white backward. Jaws closed on brittle arm. Bones snapped. John charged the next. Valyrian steel parted cloth, flesh, sinew, spine. The white collapsed, fingers scrabbling. With a kick he sent its skull rolling. 2 more advanced, one a woman in life, braids still bound with a rusted copper ring. Her eyes burned a dead cerulean fire. She hissed. John felt the hunger in that sound, the emptiness of 1,000 winters. He met her blade to blade, parried, lopped off both arms in a blur. She lurched still. He turned the point inward and pierced the ribcage. Longclaw burst out the back in a puff of frozen dust. The flame-lit arrow finally caught her hair. She became a torch, staggering. The last white lunged for Gren on the parapet. John wheeled, hurled his heavy dagger, striking the thing's open mouth. Steel pinned it to a pine trunk. There it writhed until Ed appended a tar bucket and set it alight. When the hush followed, John found his breaths ragged. Snowflakes drifted across the corpses, hissing where they touched embers. Ghost returned, muzzle caked with gray filth. The direwolf's eyes asked if more hunted beyond. John listened. Nothing but distant wind. They dragged the remains into a pyre pit hastily dug outside the gate. Flames leapt skyward, silhouetting the keep's crooked walls. Sparks rose like fireflies. Smoke smeared the low clouds. John noticed the daughters watching, some clutching crude spears, others infants. None wept. Perhaps they had forgotten how. Inside the hall, brothers and women alike ate stew that tasted of iron and triumph. Torches lined the walls. John stood by the hearth. Shadows danced across his features. The brothers eyed him with a mingling of respect and unease. He had broken guest rights, shed blood, declared command unbidden. Yet he'd saved them too. Even Arthur, oldest of the recruits, lifted his spoon to John in silent toast. Ed bowl empty, elbowed John. I'd have sworn you Northmen were raised on snow and quiet, but you make more noise than a Lysine whorehouse when the fleet's in. Lord Commander will need every rook in Castle Black to carry tales. John managed a faint smile. Noise is life, Ed. For once we'll let the forest hear us and do the fearing. Sam drew near with parchment clutched like shield. I copied the ledger, he said softly. Every mark. So the children stolen won't be forgotten. John gripped his friend's shoulder. Keep it safe. He doubted memory alone would serve justice, but words somewhere might one day. Sleep came fitful. John dozed in a corner of the hall, Ghost curled at his feet. Screams woke him once. the tall, dark-haired woman dreaming of Craster's fists. He soothed her with murmurs not unlike Maester Eamon's old lullaby, words of warmth and wood smoke, and she curled beside the fire until peace returned. Morning's light found the keep transformed. Where rot once claimed every beam, new pine trunks braced walls. Straw mats lay over mud floors, layered with hides. 2 lean-to sheds housed chickens rescued half-feral from the underbrush. John organized hunting parties. 3 brothers, 2 women each, ghost guiding. They brought back hares, a fox, even a shaggy goat half-crippled by an old wolf bite. By dusk, smoke from 5 cooking pits twisted skyward like incense. Yet tension stalked each shadow. Night might return with greater horrors. The others disliked broken bargains. Sam suggested erecting a weirwood shrine to appease old gods who fought the icy ones. There was no heart tree near, but John approved gathering red branches for a crude altar. Anything to grant courage. 2 days after the burial, horns blasted again. Once, then twice, then thrice. Men scrambled, weapons flashing. But the figures approaching from the south were black shapes on shaggy garrons, cloaks trimmed in raven feathers. It was Lord Commander Gior Mormont. John hurried to the gate. The old bear rode at the column's head, gray-white beard stiff with rime. His eyes swept the palisade, noting fresh timbers, soot-scarred snow, women on the watchpoints aiming bows. "Open," John called down. The gate creaked wide. Mormont entered at a walk, ignoring drawn bows. Behind him came Sir Jeremy Ricker, Corrin half-hand fresh from the Shadow Tower, and a score more. Mormont dismounted before John. "Tell me, Jon Snow," he rumbled, voice like gravel in a kettle, "whose hall is this, and why do I breathe smoke of dead men from beyond my own patrol?" John bowed. "It is our hall now, my lord. Craster is dead. His wives and daughters live beneath our protection." Silence fell sharp. Mormont's gaze roved over the yard. Women hammering spearheads, children stirring porridge. He sniffed the air. "Dead, you say?" John spoke the tale plain. Craster's cruelty, the fight, the white attack.
No embellisments.
When he finished, the old bear dismounted stiffly. "You have broken guest right under my command. Worse, you took a life without sanction." John began to form reply, but Mormont raised a gauntlet hand. Yet the life taken was a deserter in all but name, who fed his sons to frost demons. "My vows never protected such sin." His gaze softened a fraction. "Still, Black Allen died at Craster's board last winter for words softer than yours. I'll not ignore every rule." John's heart thumped. "I accept judgment, my lord. Judgment waits." Mormont strode to examine the palisade. "You've strengthened these walls. Good." He peered over the east parapet where ashes from the white pyre still smoldered beneath snow. "Burnt them proper? Yes, but more may come." "They will." The old bear's jaw worked. "Craster's keep lies on a fault between darkness and the realm of men. If we abandon it again, worse than whites will crawl in." He turned back. "We hold it. Your women know the woods. Your men know the watch. Together you might outlast the night. Orders stand. Jon Snow, by right of necessity, I name you Castellan of the keep until relieved." Murmurs rose. Astonishment, worry, pride. John felt words lodge in his throat. "My lord."
No gratitude.
Mormont's eyes glinted. "Only duty. I march north again by first light. The fist of the first men needs every sword. You will send reports by Raven from the rookery at Greyguard. I'll station riders at that ruin." He paused. "Find you some ravens first."
Sam puffed.
"We can trap a few. There are roosts nearby." "Do so," Mormont said. He faced John Square. "Hold here, bastard of Stark. Teach these women to live. Make this blight bloom. When I return, mayhaps I'll find a fortress worthy of the shield of men." He gripped John's forearm, the strength of it rooted like oak. Then he remounted, barked commands, and within the hour his column vanished into the southern snows, leaving John alone again, yet less alone than before, for now he commanded by law as well as action. That night he called council in the hall. Women filled benches beside black brothers. No one bowed. There was no throne. John outlined duties. Watch rotations, foraging routes, small folk work crews to deepen wells and patch roofs. He asked the women to choose spokes who would relay grievances. The tall, dark-haired archer Myra volunteered. A gaunt woman named Sella seconded. They met his eye directly, unafraid. Ed quipped, "Small council's twice as small, but twice as fair, I'll wager." Gren laughed. Even Sam managed a grin. When the meeting ended, Gilly lingered. Her belly strained her ragged gown. She rubbed the taut skin. "Winter comes fast," she said. "And the babe sooner." "We'll be ready," John assured. She tilted her head. "You speak as though summer might answer." Yet her eyes held trust. He watched her go, then climbed the parapet alone, Longclaw on hip. Ghost followed, silent sentinel. Above, the aurora unfurled again, strokes of viridian and violet dancing. John wondered if the colors were war banners unfurling for battles yet unseen. Days folded into tendies. Work became rhythm. Dawn hunts, midday repairs, twilight drills. Women crafted arrows fletched with raven feathers. Men taught them shield wall stances. Sam built a small library from mold-soaked scrolls found under Craster's floorboards. Old First Ranger journals, a Septon's tattered homily, a treatise on others penned by some mad ranger a century gone. He studied by tallow candle and compared notes, muttering of obsidian daggers and fire runes. On the 14th night after Mormont's departure, snow fell thick enough to mute sound. John paced the yard, snow reaching mid-calf though torches burned bright. Ghost stiffened at the gate. John signaled watchers, bows raised. At length a lone figure staggered from the gloom, thin, wrapped in black, face rimed white. It was Kedge White-Eye, ranger from Eastwatch. He collapsed into John's arms. Through cracked lips Kedge rasped news. The fist had fallen. Whites in thousands, the dead walking, giants serving pale riders on horseback of mist and ice. Mormont's force shattered, survivors scattering. Eastwatch manned by a skeleton crew, ravens lost. John carried him inside. Maester Otter, an aging builder pressed to heal, tended the frostbite. But dread settled heavier than winter weight. If the fist was lost, an army of death marched south unchecked. Council gathered. John told all truths. Some women wept softly. Brothers swore oaths to fight to last. John's mind churned possibilities. They could not hold if thousands came. Yet Craster's keep held food, walls, a position flanked by steep ravines on two sides. With enough fire and oil, they might bloody the horde by time for wall. Sam produced the old ranger treatise, pages brittle. "Dragon glass," he insisted, "and fire runes along walls." The first ranger wrote that obsidian shards, set burning with wildling fat, can halt the white shadows. "Obsidian we have none," Gren pointed out. "Shattered bottles serve," Sam countered, surprising all. "Glass flows from sand once under dragon fire. The old alchemists claimed small shards mimic dragon glass if heated in oil of brimstone." John seized hope. "We have plenty of bottle glass. And pitch." By dawn they forged a plan. Women smashed green tint ale flasks. Sam steeped shards in sulfuric oil. Black brothers fitted rimmed buckets atop the palisade, ready to pour molten pitch. They carved crude runes Sam copied out. Awkward crooked shapes that might hold power or merely faith. Either could fortify hearts. 3 nights later, horns sounded again. Once, twice, unending. Snowstorm raged, sleet lashing faces raw. Shadows advanced, so many the forest seemed to walk. Blue eyes blinked where eyes should not. John ordered fire arrows loosed. They streaked like comets, exploding pitch-painted night in orange. Some whites fell to ashes. More pressed. Women launched clay pots filled with Sam's oil and jagged glass. Impacts burst in green flames that hissed like serpents. Wherever shards struck, whites screamed, an awful alien sound, and collapsed into slush as though sinews severed. The wall held. Through swirling snow, John glimpsed a taller figure astride a dead elk, sword of ice pale as moonlit steel. A walker. It raised its blade, pointing at John. Frost raced along the palisade rail, wood freezing to splinter. John hefted long claw. The Valyrian steel seemed to hum, eager. He leapt down, strode through the broken gate ablaze behind him. Ghost bounded at his side. They met the walker halfway. When Iceblade met Valyrian, a shriek like riven crystal rang across the yard. Sparks of blue and white scattered. John parried, lungs burning with cold so pure it cut. The walker's eyes glowed ineffable hate. Blows fell like hail. Longclaw sang. Each strike jolted John's bones. Ghost darted, nipping at the elk's frozen flank until the beast shattered into powder. The walker dismounted in a fluid glide, snow swirling about slender legs. John risked a glance. Behind him, men forced torches into white masses, Myra loosing shaft after shaft, Sam chanting runes. He turned back as the walker thrust. Reflex saved him. The tip grazed his ribs, slicing black wool, drawing thin line of red that steamed in icy air. Pain flared sharp, cleared thought. He fainted high, then drove Longclaw low into the creature's hip. Steel bit with shrill crack. The walker recoiled, taking blade with it. John held tight, twisted. A fissure blossomed from wound, crawling silver white across its torso. With a howl like wind over tombstones, the walker exploded into shards of ice, drifting snow again. Longclaw whirled free, ringing. Instantly the wights nearest collapsed lifeless, marionette strings cut. Others hesitated, blue flames in skulls flickering. John shouted, "Now fire!" Pitch buckets tipped, torrents cascading. Fleshless ranks writhed, burning. An hour later the yard lay littered with black husks and melting ice. Fires still roared along ramparts. None inside the walls had died, save old Stig whose heart burst while swinging an axe. John knelt over him, closed the man's eyes. Victory tasted of smoke and copper. Dawn peeled back clouds. The field beyond glimmered glassy where walker and elk had fallen, a mirror of fractured shards. John gathered a handful, pocketed them. Proof for Maester Eamon perhaps, or a charm. They spent that day extinguishing flames, stacking corpses, resetting defenses. Every face bore soot, every heart beat fiercer. Word spread. A walker slain by Jon Snow. Women touched the hilt of Longclaw when he passed, murmuring thanks. But grief rode with triumph. Sam found Kedge dead in his cot, lungs too frostbitten. Jon ordered a pyre at dusk. They burned him with a ranger's honor. From the flames floated a single black feather, drifting till Ghost snapped it from the air. Winter deepened. Patrols found dead forests, but no fresh armies. Wary peace settled. They trapped ravens, sleek black wings beating inside wicker cages. Sam trained them to roost, tied messages. The fist is lost. Crasters keep holds. White walker slain. Send aid. They dispatched birds to Castle Black, Eastwatch, Shadow Tower. Whether any would cross storms none could know. Weeks lengthened. Snow wallowed shoulder deep outside walkways tunneled like white canyons. Still they worked, forging spearheads from iron scraps, weaving fur blankets, tending goats now 6. Gilly's belly grew. She winced at each kick. Jon arranged a birthing loft away from smoke, cleaned with pine resin. On the eve of the longest night, pale green curtains flickered overhead again. Crackling aurora washed walls. Jon stood watch with Myra. She handed him a fletched arrow tipped with glass shard. "For the next walker," she said. Her grin bared chipped teeth, but her eyes shone bright. Jon tucked it into his quiver. "Let's hope no next comes." She laughed low. "Hope keeps us warm, Snow." Later, by the dying hearth, Sam unrolled maps inked with new lines. Patrol paths, booby trap pits, sightlines for archers. He looked so unlike the boy who once cowered from Craster's insults that Jon marveled. "You've changed," Jon remarked. Sam adjusted glasses chipped at rim. "Fear can forge a man as well as make him falter. Besides, He glanced at Gilly sleeping near fire. "Some things are worth braving the dark." John nodded. Longclaw leaned against his knee. He touched the pommel-carved wolf head, recalling Ned Stark's words of mercy and strength. Craster's death haunted him still, one killing birthing countless turns. Yet each dawn glimpsed children laughing in the yard, women shaping fresh bread, brothers drilling with pride. Life rose fierce from murder's soil. He closed his eyes, let emberlight paint the inner lids. 5 hours of story, they had filled perhaps 2 so far, he reckoned with wry smile. Ahead loomed countless more. The wall's reply, Mormont's fate, the other's wrath, the birth of Gilly's son, the forging of allies among free folk perhaps drawn by fire and courage. The tale stretched like frozen river into dawns yet unborn. But for this moment, in this hall reclaimed by common hands, the flame burned steady. Jon Snow breathed deep the mingled sense of ash, pine, stew, and newborn hope, and felt, for the first time since leaving Winterfell, the faint, impossible warmth of belonging. Night lay thick and breathless over the pines. A hush so absolute it seemed every living thing in the haunted forest had paused to draw the same uncertain breath. Frost rimed the logs of the palisade in glittering scales. Torchlight flickered along their lengths, catching at intervals the silhouettes of women on the wall walk who had once crept these grounds barefoot and fearful. Now they stood wrapped in patchwork furs, bows cradled like infants, eyes sweeping the dark with a hunter's calm. Above them the aurora unfurled in broad, silent banners. Green, violet, a ghostly sheen of rose that lit high clouds from within, as though some goddess warmed her hands behind the sky. Jon Snow walked the inner yard with Ghost pacing at heel, each drifting plume of the direwolf's breath a pale echo of his own. 7 weeks had passed since the night the walker shattered under Longclaw's edge. 7 weeks of work so constant he carried the ache of it in every joint. Yet the keep felt different from the ruin he had claimed. Life clung stubborn as lichen in stone cracks. Chickens scratching beneath lean-to rafters, smoke from 6 hearths curling into the night, laughter ringing when someone teased Dolorous Ed about his eternal gloom. He paused near the gate tower where Myra leaned on a spear half thicker than her wrist. Moonlight silvered her hair. She gave a crisp nod. "Quiet?" Jon asked. "For once," she said. Though quiet north of the wall often means something's coming. He studied the tree line. All he saw were shadows layered on shadow, trunks blurring into a wall of dark so dense it swallowed depth. Yet he felt it too. The weight behind the silence, like a tide holding back. Soon enough it would surge. "Every arrow bucket topped," he murmured. "Twice over." Gren had the lad's haul more pitch this afternoon. She hefted her spear, the new obsidian glass tip glimmering. "Sam swears by these shards." Jon managed to smile. Sam's become priest, maester, and pyromancer in one. If his faith holds half the power his heart does, the shards will match Valyrian steel. Myra's grin flashed white. "I'll settle for even a quarter." He moved on, inspecting rope ladders, checking that torches were seated firm in brackets, offering a word to each sentry. At the southeast angle, he found Samwell Tarley himself hunched at a makeshift desk under a canvas awning, scribbling by glow-bark lantern. Snow caked his shoulders. "Sam," Jon said gently. The quill jerked in surprise. "Jon, I was updating reports. 2 ravens returned from Eastwatch." He waved tatty parchment. "Marsh retook the castle with men fleeing south. He means to ride for the keep as soon as reinforcements gather." Jon's chest loosened. "The wall stands, then?" "Barely." Sam's voice thickened. "Eastwatch lost 2 towers, but they hold." He glanced up, and apprehension shone in his lantern-lit eyes. "They'll expect leadership here, more than a picket line with children and hens." "We'll show them," Jon said. "This place is stronger than any of us dreamed." Sam nodded, but his gaze drifted past Jon's shoulder to the birthing loft window where candlelight flickered. Gilly's time grew near. Every hour Jon saw Sam's worry enlarge like an eclipse. "Go," Jon told him. "She needs you more than parchment does." Relief softened Sam's round face. He set Quill aside, hugged John awkwardly, and trudged toward the loft. John watched until the door latched behind him, then turned to Ghost. "Come," he whispered, and the wolf slipped beside him as he crossed the yard and climbed the main hall steps. Inside, heat wrapped him in cloves of smoke, mutton, wet wool. Brothers and women shared benches around two long tables. Ed recited a filthy limerick. Laughter erupted. Otter scolded half-heartedly about decency in mixed company. When John entered, conversation dipped, then resumed with less strain than early days. Respect no longer warred with fear. He removed cloak, hung it near the door, and accepted a cup of weak ale from young Cora, who once trembled at footfalls. Now her chin lifted as if offering drink to a king. He thanked her, then threaded toward the hearth where a broad-shouldered free woman, Osha, who had drifted to them from nowhere days after Walker attack, sharpened a sword of northern make. She had given few answers about her path south, but her eyes watched every door, and the blade already bore 3 fresh notches of ice-killed bone. "Osha," John greeted. "Snow." She tested the edge. "Walls look good, but you're low on spirits and salt. I could take a party south, trade at Molestown. Roads are thick with dead." "Aye, but the living still bargain." She flicked hair from her brow. "Think on it. Hungry throats breed mutiny." He respected her candor. "Tomorrow at dawn, pick 5. I'll send Gren with coin." He sipped the ale thin but warming.
No risks.
"Life's risk," she said, but grinned. "We'll be back with skins of wine and sacks of salt pork, you'll see." John left her to her steel. Near the side hearth Bannon, the fiddler from the shadow tower, drew a bow across strings, coaxing a low dirge that threaded through talk. It was a Riverlands tune, older than Aegon, about a maiden lost in snow whose lover searched until spring. John listened a moment, eyelids heavy with memory of Winterfell's halls where old Nan hummed that same melody while sewing him breeches too small for a lord's bastard. A crash shuddered the floor. Shouted curses followed. John pivoted toward the storage corridor. 2 brothers wrestled a cask, one slipping on spilled grain. The cask thudded and split. Oats cascaded. A girl screamed as rats erupted from the crack, sleek bodies spilling into lamplight. John strode forward. Ghost leaped, jaws snapping. A tail vanished between his teeth. The brothers kicked, women brandished spoons. In half a minute the hall calmed, the rats dead or scattered, but the grain was ruined. John knelt, handful of oats trickling between his fingers. Waste stung him sharper than ice. Supplies dwindled faster than trapping could replenish. Each loss cut deep. He stood. "Barrows this corner," he ordered. "Dry boards over the breach. Double the cat patrol." Laughter surfaced, grim but real. They swept hull shards and oats, patched cracks with hide strips, and soon the hall rang again with voices. Yet as John settled by the hearth, he felt the keep's pulse falter. Winter pressed. Each day shortened. Each ration stretched thin. He stared into the fire until shapes formed. The walker's icy visage, the fist shrouded in wailing snow, the wall buckling under flood of dead. He saw Castle Black a blackened shell, saw Arya's small face pale in ash. He flinched and stood, outside cold bit deep. He climbed the silent rookery tower, built from felled spruce atop the old pigpen, where a dozen black shapes huddled in cages. 2 birds cooed softly, the pair from Eastwatch. He fed them kernels, ran a finger over stubble heads. More ravens were needed, messages, pleas for steel and men. But none came north now unless carried by fear. Wind cut across the yard. John paced the wall walk until lamps guttered. Snowflakes drifted, lazy at first, then thickening. He glimpsed a figure alone at the outer gate. Otter the healer, eyes cast toward east. John joined him. "Maester," he said. Otter started. "Forgive. I slip into thought these nights. Trouble. Always." The healer's lined face creased more. But tonight, Gilly's pains began. John's breath caught. "Is Sam?" He steadies her. "I mixed willow bark and mint tea." He exhaled. "But the babe sits wrong. She needs warmth, patience, hope, and Sam's hope is fragile. John laid a gloved hand on Otter's arm. Tell me what's needed. A quiet hall, hot water, clean cloth. I have the rest. Then she'll have it. He turned, issued orders. The main hall emptied at once, benches dragged aside, hearth stoked until coals glowed white. Women boiled water, brothers spun linen scraps into bandages. Myra stationed archers outside door to grant calm. John waited by loft ladder while Sam knelt beside Gilly on a straw-piled pallet. The girl's face shone with sweat. Her nails dug Sam's forearm. Otter murmured, pressing her abdomen. Outside the wind rose, rattling beams like skeletal fingers. The birth dragged through the night. John stood sentinel, long claw across knees, listening to Gilly's cries rise and fade. Each echoed down his spine, recalling Lady Caitlin's birthing bed long ago, the cord blood under shutters when Bran gasped first breath. Memory gripped him. His own mother's face unknown, her voice lost. He blinked hard. At last, near dawn, a thin wail pierced the hall. Not of pain, but life. John exhaled a breath he hadn't known he held. Sam's sob followed, raw and bright. Otter announced, "A girl." Women cheered. Brothers pounded shields. John closed his eyes. A girl meant no sacrifice to white shadows. No living bargain. Just life. He entered quietly. Gilly lay limp, smile so wide it cracked her lips. Sam cradled the tiny bundle, tears shining on his cheeks. He looked up at John, and for once words failed him. John brushed Gilly's hair from her brow. "Welcome home," he whispered to the infant. She blinked huge brown eyes, reached, fingers curling around John's thumb. Strength in that grasp startled him. "You've your mother's fight," he told her. Gilly spoke, voice hoarse. Will you name her Jon Snow?" He met Sam's watery gaze. "Sam should." Sam shook his head, overcome. "You saved us," he rasped. "Name her." John swallowed. In his mind rose another strong woman, fierce as storm winds, who'd once saddled young Bran and Arya, who kissed Robb's brow before battles, who stitched Jon's clothes though he wore no Stark name. "Call her Cat," he said, "for a lady who fought for all her children." Gilly smiled, tears spilling.
Samchok-Talef.
Otter nodded. They wrapped Cat in lamb's wool, laid her by the fire. John slipped out, heart lighter yet heavy with promise. The child deserved a world where Walker Ice did not claim the next dawn. The snowstorm broke 3 days later, unveiling a sky so clear the stars seemed hammered holes leaking raw light. A horn sounded once, rider approaching. John, Myra, and Ghost met him at the gate. Tormund Giantsbane atop a shaggy elk, red beard crusted with ice. Behind trailed 30 wildlings bearing torches. They looked ragged but alive. "Boy!" Tormund boomed, laughter wedged beneath fatigue. "I heard a crow wears the keep like a stolen pelt." John chuckled. "Enter, Tormund. Leave hatred outside. Hate freezes quicker than ale." Tormund dismounted. "We come to parley. Dead men drive us south. Your fires shine bright. We'll warm our bones." John opened the gate. Wildlings filed in, wary as wolves near kennel dogs. Women fanned along parapets, bows half-drawn. Brothers bristled. John raised a hand, "Hold." Inside the hall, he and Tormund faced one another across the great hearth. Tormund's eyes took stock. New beams, glass-tipped spears, infants mewling in cradles. "You built more than walls here," he said. "We built vows," John replied. "Any who honor life may share them." Tormund grunted. "Some balk, but the old gods whisper, 'Join or perish.'" He leaned close. "A monster with eyes of frost leads thousands my way. We flee, but there's no farther west. Sea blocks path. South's your wall." John felt the balance shift under those words. 30 wildlings today. Tomorrow 300. Next moon, 3,000. Each mouth drained stores. Each spear might save them. Choices knotted tight. He straightened. "Stay," he said. "Fight with us and we'll open paths to the wall when spring melts. Betray, and you die under it. Tormund barked a laugh. Straight tongue on a bastard crow. I'll rally my folk. We stand. They clasped arms. That night the hall brimmed. Harps twanged. Wilding drums pounded. Black brothers sparred scarred men in wrestling matches. Osha danced with Bannon. Even Ed laughed, though he claimed he only bartered his despair for mead. Sam watched from loft, Cat sleeping against his shoulder. John caught his eye. Both shared a fragile smile. Peace, thin as spun glass, glimmered in lamplight. Winter struck anew, harder. Snow swallowed pits, buried outer sheds, stacked against walls until archers fired arrows from half-submerged walkways. Yet numbers swelled. Osha's trading party returned with mules laden with salt, dried cod, and 4 barrels of Dornish red seized from smugglers. Tormund's scouts guided another 100 free folk, women, babes, graybeards on sleds, to the keep. Otter conscripted girls to carry water, some boys to milk goats. Chores found every hand. John organized deeper storage tunnels carved into frozen earth. Brothers mined ice blocks to build a sunken moat, filling it with pitch that could be lit if whites breached outer line. Wildlings taught the women to cast bolus. The daughters taught rangers to weave rush mats that insulated roofs. A single community knitted itself through necessity, thread by thread. Still the watch's code weighed heavy. John forbade coupling between brothers and freed women. Tensions simmered. One night he caught Clydes, a surly recruit, pressing a young wife in the granary. John dragged him before council, stripped his cloak, and exiled him into the night with only a skin of water. Ghost escorted him to tree line and returned alone. None questioned the sentence afterward, but murmurs grew. Snow rules harder than Mormont. John bore it in silence, yet guilt gnawed. Each judgment seemed to chip a fleck of the boy raised in Winterfell, leaving stony faces like his father's. But Ned had taught that the man who passes sentence must swing the sword. John swung, and Craster's keep survived. On the 23rd night after Cat's birth, horn calls split the dark. 1, 2, 3, 3 again. Not rangers, unknown. John dashed to the parapet. Torches flickered far out, bobbing like lone stars. He ordered silence, watched. Shapes struggled through drifts. Half a dozen men in patchwork armor. One brandished a peace flag of dirty linen. John peered down. Shock lanced him. Thuras of Myr strode before the group, pink scalp gleaming under hood. Behind came Lem Lemoncloak, Greenbeard, and 3 Riverland small folk bundled near freezing. John ordered gate open. They stumbled inside, bones clacking. Thuras collapsed heaving. Lem caught him. John guided them to the hall, stripped gloves, poured hot broth. At length Thuras spoke. Brother without banners. No banners now. We rode north seeking living flame. Instead found death endless. He caught John's sleeve. But we carry something for you, Lord Snow. From beneath his jerkin he drew a scroll, sealed with castle black wax. Edric Dane gave me this, before he fell at Oak's Ridge. Said you'd honor what remains. John broke seal. Inside, a letter from Maester Eamon, penned shaky. John, hope carries on raven wings. Castle black endures but blood thins. Rangers scattered. Lord Commander gone. Last seen on banks of the Milkwater. Eastwatch fights. Shadow Tower silent. Stannis Baratheon marches north to relieve us. His fleet sighted at Skagos. Hold the keep at any cost. Light in the darkness, boy. We follow it. Tears prick John's eyes. Mormont missing, yet alive perhaps. Stannis bringing fire. If they could last. He looked up. Thuras, your men may rest here, but soon we march. March, Ed muttered. To where? Frostfang passes, John answered. We know a cache of dragonglass buried in old First Men Barrow, 2 days west. With obsidian blades we can face a host. Sam's eyes widened. Benjen Stark's notes. He mentioned black glass there. John nodded. We leave sunrise. Gren bristled, but none challenged. Even wildlings knew the stories. Obsidian kills walkers. That night John climbed the rookery tower again. Snow fell soft, whispering over eaves. He stared east where unseen walls stood colossal against horizon, imagined torches on its crest. He wondered if Stannis truly came, Lord of Flames spiting the dark. He pictured Melisandre's red eyes, Davos's steady hand, Shireen's shy smile. Allies he had yet to meet might decide their dawn. Below, Cat cried. Gilly soothed with lullaby. Somewhere Bannon's fiddle sang the maiden in snow once more. Jon closed his eyes. He thought of Bran, Arya, Sansa, Rickon, scattered siblings like ravens on wind. He whispered oath again. Night gathers, and now my watch begins. It shall not end at Craster's keep. He breathed cold so deep it burned, then turned toward Stair, already planning routes and rations. The frost-white dawn found 32 souls assembled at the gate. Jon, Ghost, Sam determined despite fear, Gren, Myra, Osha, Thuras and 3 of his band, Tormund with his axe giant's bane, and a dozen mixed wildlings and daughters brave enough. Each bore packs light on food but heavy with ropes, spades, torches, Sam's rune chalk, and Ed's dry humor. Lovely day for digging our own graves, he muttered as wind howled. Better dig theirs. Myra shot back, knocking arrow to string. Jon raised a fist. We move. They set out west, snow cresting thighs, but Ghost found drifts firm beneath a crust to bear weight. Pines thinned into stunted shrubs. Rocky ridges thrust up, jagged as dragon teeth. By midday they reached the milk-water frozen solid, white plains stretching north and south. They crossed single file while Thuras muttered prayers to his drowned god of fire, and Sam sketched runes on ice at intervals lest cracks hide. At dusk they camped in a shallow cave screened by icicles. Jon set watches. Inside, fire sputtered low, wood scarce, and they huddled close. Tormund told tales of cannibal thin men prowling starved, of giants weeping as babies froze, of a walker crowned in antlers of black ice. His words painted dread, but listening tightened their resolve. If such horrors marched, they must meet them with more than fear. Jon dreamed that night beneath firs. He stood atop the wall alone. Storm clouds writhed, split open to reveal a dragon made of dusk and embers soaring north, melting snow with each beat. On its back sat a woman clad in shadow mail, hair of ash, eyes like bleeding suns. She looked at him, whispered a name he could not hear, then the dragon screamed and the wall cracked. He woke sweating though frost-rimmed lashes. Morning bit blood from cheeks. They trudged upslope, legs burning. Near noon Ghost stopped, ears flat. Jon signaled still. Ahead, snow mounded like dune. Beyond it lay the barrow, a hump of granite crowned by carved stones, each chiseled with runes older than first men. Drifts partly covered its mouth, an arch of megaliths leaning inward, resembling jaws.
Sam gasped.
Just as Benjen drew, they approached. Wind hissed through cracks, low like endless chant. Myra and Osha levered stones aside until a gap yawned black. Jon struck torch from pitch rag, descended first. The tunnel angled steep, frost glass coated walls. Steps ended in chamber broad as Winterfell's crypt, ceiling hung with pale stalactites. At center sat a stone chest carved with spirals, lid half ajar. Jon eased it open. Inside lay bundles wrapped in hide. Knife blades, arrowheads, spear tips, all dragonglass shimmering oily purple. Alongside rested a warhorn bound in bronze verged with runes. Ice-filled mouth. Thuras whistled low. Jon's hands trembled as he lifted one long, leaf-shaped dagger. Light from his torch danced in its folds. Fire made stone alive. We take what we can bear, he said. They filled packs. Sam cradled the horn fervently. Gren loaded arrowheads, stringing them to quivers. Myra claimed a short obsidian sword, eyes fierce. When packs bulged, they replaced lid, sealing remainder. Sam sprinkled rune chalk around chest, words for guardianship. They turned to leave. A shriek cleaved the tunnel. Frost plumed, torch sputtered. Ghost snarled at entrance where 2 whites crawled, eyes blue lanterns. Osha hewed one down, obsidian-splitting skull. It collapsed like sacks of snow. The second reached Thuras, ice claws raking his thigh before John's dagger plunged its heart. Dead fell silent. They hurried outside. Snow swirled thick. Wind had died moments earlier but now roared. On Ridge North stood 3 walkers, each astride skeletal reindeer, cloaks fluttering like tattered moonlight. Eyes radiated cold stars. They watched without moving. Tormund cursed deep. They guard Barrow. We stole their teeth. John sheathed dagger. Run for forest. They descended at speed, slipping, sliding, dragging packs. Behind, they heard no hoofbeats. Still, the pressure of those stairs pressed heavier than wolves on flank. Snow blinded them by afternoon. Storm drove needles through wool. They reached Milkwater's banks by dusk, found ice cracked where they'd crossed. Open water swirling dark. It groaned. Old gods jest. John scanned. We shift south to shallows. But a walker stood mid-river on broken flow, ice sword raised. River steamed around its feet, water freezing anew at each step. 2 more shapes emerged upcurrent. They herded, silent. John drew Longclaw. Form circle. They clumped, shields outward, obsidian spears bristling. Wind howled like legion keening. Walker lifted sword. Flurry spun, coalescing to cyclone of shards. Gren's cheeks split. Sam shielded Cat's namesake dagger, praying. The first walker advanced onto land. Myra loosed an obsidian arrow true. It pierced the creature's throat. A crystalline scream burst as cracks webbed from wound. Shattered, fragments tinkling like bell chimes. The other 2 glided forward unfazed. John lunged, Longclaw meeting Iceblade. The clash was thunder trapped in a bell jar, ringing inside skull. Cold ate his lungs. Sweat froze in beard. He fainted left, swung high right. Steel sheared off antler crown. The walker's sword sliced his pauldron, carving flesh shallow but freezing blood instantly. Tormund charged from flank, axe embedding in pale shoulder. Together they pressed. Walker retreated toward river. Myra and Osha fought the third, arrows tipping each step. When it raised arm to strike, Thuras, thigh wound fresh, thrust obsidian spear under breastplate. Light exploded within the creature, shards blasting outward. Thuras fell but laughed through pain. Fire and stone! The last walker hissed, whirled, slashed Tormund's axe halved in twain. John parried again, feeling bones lathe. Rain of ice shards peppered his cloak as the breaker wind crashed. Sam shouted behind. John dared glance. Whites rose from banks, soaking wet corpses stumbling, eyes blue. Wildlings met them, blades of napped glass flashing. One white grabbed Sam. Ghost launched, tearing head free. The horn tumbled from Sam's grip, rolled near John's foot. Runes glowed faint on bronze surface. John felt impulse bloom wild. A horn said to wake giants. Old Nan's tales whispered, horn of Jormungand to shake the wall. Was this it? He scooped horn, pressed to lips. Sound burst. A deep, primal bellow that vibrated marrow. Snow spouts leapt along river. Trees snapped. The walker staggered, sword fracturing. John seized moment. He hurled Longclaw in 2-hand arc. Blade spun, severing walker's neck. Explosion of frost roared. Shockwave tossed men, whites, wolves alike. Silence crashed after thunder. Snow settled. John lay on back, chest heaving, horn clutched. Ghost nudged his face. Pain flared at shoulder gash, but he lived. They rose. Whites lay inert again. River iced solid anew, but no walker moved upon it. Tormund hooped, hugging Myra. Sam retrieved Longclaw from drift, offered hilt to John with trembling smile. Wall heard that note in Old Town, Ed said, voice shaky. John eyed horn. It smoked faint, bronze hot yet untouched by flame. Power thrummed. We go, he ordered, tucking horn into pack. They mar. Ched through night, reaching keep walls by dawn. Cheers greeted their battered band. Women wept, brothers clapped. They unloaded obsidian into armory, poured mulled ale, tended wounds. John sank onto bench, exhaustion crushing limbs. But relief glowed. They possessed weapons to kill the night. He slept dreamless until dusk. The next weeks blurred in rhythm of forging, drilling, riding ravens. Dragonglass blades fitted to spear shafts, arrowheads glued to shafts with pine resin. Sam studied horn runes, deciphering fragments. Wind, wake, wall, fire. He believed the blast disrupted walker control over whites. John planned contingencies to sound it at battle's height. Snow piled higher, stores stretched, yet wildlings hunted game south of Ridge, trading pelts for bread. Tormund coached archers to loose from skis. Myra taught river ice fishing. Otter claimed the keep might survive till spring if spring dared arrive. One dawn, a lone rider approached. Stannis Baratheon clad in black and scarlet. His banner the fiery heart. Behind trudged 500 knights and spearmen, Melisandre in red silk on pale mare. Jon greeted him at gate. Stannis' sharp eyes swept walls bristling with obsidian tips, torches, wildling sentries. "A bastard commands crows and wild men alike," he said, voice dry. "Remarkable." Jon bowed. "Necessity makes allies." Stannis' gaze flicked to horn slung at Jon's side. "A weapon, perhaps salvation," Jon answered. Melisandre leaned forward, red eyes gleaming. "Azor Ahai's trumpet, or a shade? I would see it." Jon hesitated, then offered. She traced runes, murmured Valyrian. "The fire sleeps inside," she whispered, handing back. "In right breath, it may wake mountains." Stannis surveyed yard where free folk trained beside brothers. "We ride to Castle Black tomorrow, yet I require foothold beyond wall. Your keep will serve." He nodded. "Hold it in my name, Lord Snow." Jon stiffened. "I serve Night's Watch." "Watch needs lords now," Stannis said. "Night is long, and dawn demands titles." He turned away. That night council argued until flames died to coals. Some clamored for king's gold. Others feared southern chains. Jon listened, spoke little. At last he rose. "Stannis' crown means less than children's laughter." He glanced toward loft where Cat slept. "We keep the keep for life, not for lords. Let Stannis fight his war. We fight ours." The hall fell silent. Then Tormund pounded fist. Myra raised bow. Sam nodded through tears. Consensus forged. Morning saw Stannis depart, leaving a garrison of 50 men-at-arms sworn to his banner. They eyed wildlings sidelong but obeyed Jon's orders. Melisandre lingered by gate, crimson hair aflame in sun. "You have walked shadow and flame both," she told Jon. "The song is not finished. When the cold tides surge, sound the horn thrice under bleeding star. King's answer or fall." With that, she rode south. Jon touched the horn's bronze rim, feeling pulse. Bleeding star? Perhaps comet of red flame Maester Luwin spoke of years past, or something yet unborn. He sighed. Winter's back broke slowly. First a day where sun felt heavier, then icicles dripped, then ravens returned with twigs in beaks. Snow receded, revealing earth black and hungry. Fields could not sprout so north, but root gardens sprouted in trench greenhouses Tormund's women built from glass panes scavenged off wrecked farmsteads. Children, Cat toddling by now, chased goats among budding thorn shrubs. Yet danger never slept. Scouts whispered of walkers massing east, forging a column 3 miles long. Jon assembled a council of every able fighter. Maps unfurled across table. The river, the ravines, the kill fields dotted with pitch pits. "We lure them to river ice," Jon said. "Horn blast, obsidian volley, flame from walls. If they breach inner yard," he looked at Sam.
Sam swallowed.
"I'll sound horn again." All nodded. 3 nights later, the aurora blazed scarlet for first time. Melisandre's bleeding star, Tormund murmured. Ice cracked along horizon. Drums of frost echoed. The war for dawn marched at last. Jon stood on parapet, longclaw raised, horns slung across back, ghost beside him, eyes twin embers. Behind, hundreds gathered, wildling, crow, Riverlander, Kingsman, each bearing obsidian blade. Gilly cradled cat in loft doorway, weeping silent yet proud. Jon inhaled cold that burned, sensed the heartbeats around him, many, but one. He rasped words none heard but whined, "Father, guide my hand." Far off, a line of blue lights flickered between pines. Eyes of an army of the dead, advancing toward Craster's keep reborn. Jon Snow lifted the war horn to his lips, and the world drew breath.